There is a thief living inside your head. It does not break down your door at night. It does not steal your wallet or empty your bank account. It works slowly, quietly, patiently, and it has been robbing you every single day without you even realizing it. It does not take your money. It takes something far more precious. It takes your years. They call it procrastination, but that word is too gentle, too academic, too soft for what it actually does to a human life. What procrastination truly is, stripped down to its raw, ugly truth, is self-betrayal. It is the daily act of choosing the comfortable lie over the uncomfortable truth. It is the habit of promising yourself a better tomorrow while sabotaging today, over and over and over, until one morning you wake up and realize that all those tomorrows have quietly stacked up into a lifetime and nothing has changed. Most people already know what they need to do. That is the tragedy here. This is not a problem of information. You have access to more knowledge right now than any human civilization in history. The entire library of human wisdom is sitting in your pocket, accessible in seconds. You know what you should eat. You know you should move your body. You know you should wake up earlier, spend your hours more deliberately, build something meaningful, stop numbing yourself with distraction. You know all of this. You have always known. But knowing is not the same as doing. And that gap, that enormous, devastating gap between what you know and what you actually do, that is where dreams go to die. Think about the last year of your life. Not the highlights, not the moments you would post for the world to see. Think about the ordinary days, the Tuesday mornings, the Sunday afternoons, the late nights when you told yourself you would finally start. Where did those hours go? What was built with them? What was moved forward? What was begun? For most people, if they answer that question with brutal honesty, the answer is sobering. Hours dissolved into distraction. Weeks slipped by in a blur of busyness that produced very little. Months passed where the important things, the real things, the dreams and goals and meaningful work were quietly pushed to the back of the line, one delay at a time. And here is the most dangerous part of all. Each individual delay felt harmless. I'll start Monday. Harmless. I just need to get in the right headspace first. Harmless. I work better under pressure. I'll do it closer to the deadline. Harmless. I'm tired today. Tomorrow, I'll be fresher. Harmless. But take any single one of those thoughts and repeat it every day for 10 years, and what do you have? A decade of wasted potential. A life that looks almost exactly the same at 40 as it did at 30, with nothing built, nothing finished, nothing to show for all the time that passed. Procrastination does not steal your life all at once. That would be too obvious, too easy to fight. Instead, it takes 1 hour here, 1 afternoon there, 1 week postponed into the next. And by the time you notice what has happened, by the time you feel the weight of all those lost hours, years have already passed that you cannot recover. That is the silence of this thief. That is why it is so dangerous. We are going to talk about this today, honestly, without sugarcoating it, without making it comfortable, without giving you a soft and pleasant path around the truth. Because the truth is what will actually set you free. We are going to examine what procrastination really is, where it truly comes from, what it costs you in ways you may not have fully calculated, and, most importantly, exactly how you can break free from it permanently and build the kind of disciplined, purposeful daily life that turns ordinary people into people who actually accomplish things. This is not a quick fix. There are no shortcuts here. But if you are willing to listen honestly, think deeply, and most critically, act on what you hear, your life can look genuinely different 1 year from today. Not different because the world changed, different because you did. Let us begin. Point 1. The anatomy of delay. Understanding what procrastination really is. Before you can defeat something, you have to understand it. Not the surface version of it, the deep version, the real version. Most people think procrastination is laziness. It is not. Lazy people do not feel guilty. Lazy people are not tormented by the awareness of what they should be doing. Lazy people are not lying awake at 2 in the morning with a head full of unfinished tasks and unkept promises. Procrastinators feel all of those things. And that is precisely why procrastination is more complicated and in some ways more dangerous than simple laziness. Procrastination is, at its core, a coping mechanism. It is the mind's attempt to avoid discomfort. When a task feels overwhelming, threatening, uncertain, or difficult, when it carries the possibility of failure or judgment or the exposure of your limitations, the mind instinctively looks for an exit. And delay is the most accessible exit available. This is important because it changes how you need to approach the problem. If procrastination were simply laziness, the cure would be simple: work harder. But procrastination is actually a response to emotional discomfort, which means the cure requires something deeper. It requires understanding what discomfort you are trying to avoid and developing the capacity to face it directly. Let us look at the different shapes procrastination takes, because it is more disguised than most people realize. The obvious face: direct avoidance. This is the version everyone recognizes. The report that needs writing, the The email that needs sending, the difficult conversation that needs to happen, the business plan that needs to be started. You know what needs to be done. You do not do it. You open something else, do something else, think about something else, anything else, and the task sits there, undone, getting heavier in your mind with each passing day. The disguised face, productive procrastination. This is the sneaky version, and it is far more common than people admit. You are busy. You feel busy. You look productive from the outside. But when you examine what you are actually doing with your hours, you realize you are working on everything except the thing that matters most. You are answering low-priority emails instead of writing the proposal. You are reorganizing your desk instead of making the call. You are optimizing your task management system instead of actually completing tasks. You are reading about how to start instead of starting. You are preparing to prepare. This version is particularly dangerous because it comes with the illusion of progress. You end the day feeling like you worked hard, and technically you did, just not on the thing that would actually move your life forward. The perfectionist face, planning without acting. This one wears the mask of high standards. You will not start until conditions are perfect, until you have done enough research, until you have the right equipment, the right moment, the right energy level, the right plan, until you have thought through every possible variable and accounted for every potential mistake. And so the starting never happens, because conditions are never perfect, because there is always one more thing to research, because the plan always has one more detail to refine. What this version is really avoiding is the vulnerability of actually attempting something and having it fall short. As long as you are still in the planning phase, the dream is still intact and flawless in your imagination. The moment you start, it becomes real, and real things can fail. Real things can be imperfect, and the fear of that imperfection keeps many people forever in the preparation room, never stepping out onto the actual field. The overwhelm phase, paralysis by complexity. Sometimes procrastination is not about fear of failure or fear of imperfection. Sometimes it is simply about the brain being overwhelmed by the sheer size and complexity of a task. When something feels too enormous, too many steps, too many unknowns, too much to figure out, the mind shuts down. It cannot find a clear entry point, so it retreats to something manageable, something small and defined, something with a beginning, middle, and end that can be completed in the next 20 minutes. The problem is that something small and defined is usually not the important thing. The important thing is the enormous, complex, uncertain task sitting there waiting, the one that actually matters. Understanding these different faces is valuable because it tells you that the solution is not one-dimensional. Just work harder does not address productive procrastination or perfectionism or overwhelm. The solutions need to be tailored to the actual form procrastination is taking in your life. But before we get to solutions, we need to sit with something uncomfortable for a moment. We need to talk honestly about cost. Point 2, the real price you are paying. Procrastination has a price tag. Most people have never sat down and actually calculated it, which is one of the reasons it continues unchecked. When something costs you a little bit each day, the bill can grow enormous before you notice. But once you actually see the number, once you look at the full invoice, it changes things. Let us calculate the cost together. The cost in time. You get 24 hours today. The same 24 hours as everyone else on the planet. The billionaire and the struggling entrepreneur, the person who built something remarkable, and the person who spent another year wondering why nothing changed. Time is the one resource distributed with perfect equality, and yet the outcomes people achieve with it are wildly different. Why? Because some people protect their time ferociously and spend it on things that compound. Others bleed it away, hour by hour, in 1,000 small delays and distractions. Think about what 2 hours per day adds up to over 1 year. 2 hours daily is 730 hours annually. In 730 focused hours, you could learn a new language to conversational fluency. You could write a book. You could build a side business from zero to generating revenue. You could become genuinely skilled at something that would change the trajectory of your career. Now ask yourself, where did your last 730 hours go? Not the hours you slept, not the hours you spent working at your job, the discretionary hours, the hours that were yours to direct. Where did they actually go? For most people, when they answer that question honestly, a significant portion of those hours went to delay, distraction, and avoidance, to scrolling, to watching content that neither educated nor truly entertained, but simply occupied the mind long enough to avoid sitting with the discomfort of the undone thing. Those hours are gone. You cannot recover them. The question is what you will do with the next 730. The cost and momentum here is something almost no one talks about. Procrastination does not just cost you the time you spend not working on something. It costs you momentum. And momentum is one of the most powerful forces in human productivity. When you are consistently doing the work, when you show up every day and make progress, even small progress, something begins to happen in your mind and your skill set. You enter a state of flow more easily. Problems that seem difficult begin to have solutions. Your speed increases. Your quality improves. Ideas come to you when you are away from the work because your subconscious is actively engaged with the project. Momentum is a multiplier. The same amount of effort applied consistently over time produces dramatically more output than the same total effort applied in scattered bursts. Procrastination destroys momentum. Every time you stop and restart, you pay a re-entry tax. You have to spend time and mental energy getting back up to speed, reconnecting with where you were, remembering what the plan was, overcoming the initial resistance all over again. If you stop and restart 100 times, you pay that re-entry tax 100 times, which means you end up doing a fraction of the actual work with the same amount of time. The cost to your identity. This is the one that cuts deepest, and it is the one people talk about least. Every time you break a promise to yourself, every time you say, "I'll do it tomorrow," and tomorrow comes and you do not do it, you send a message to yourself about who you are. That message, repeated thousands of times over years, shapes your self-concept. It shapes how you see yourself at the most fundamental level. Start saying, "I always procrastinate, and I never follow through, and I can't seem to make myself do what I say I'm going to do." And your behavior will begin to conform to that identity. The mind is always trying to act in accordance with its picture of itself. If your picture of yourself is someone who delays and avoids and fails to follow through, your actions will reflect that picture. The most devastating cost of procrastination is not the lost time. It is the erosion of self-trust. Because once you stop trusting yourself, once you stop believing that your words to yourself carry any real weight, the damage spreads into every area of life. You stop setting ambitious goals because you have learned not to believe your own ambitions. You stop making bold commitments because you know you probably will not keep them. You shrink. You play smaller. You lower the ceiling on your life to match the limited floor of what you currently believe yourself capable of following through on. And that, more than anything else, is why procrastination must be taken seriously. Not because it costs you time, though it does. Not because it costs you opportunity, though it does that too. But because it costs you yourself, your confidence, your self-respect, your sense of possibility, your belief in your own capacity to build the life you want. The cost in compounding. One final dimension of cost that deserves attention, the compound effect. Just as money invested wisely compounds over time, growing exponentially because each year's gains become the foundation for the next year's growth, skills, habits, and progress compound the same way. The person who starts building their business at 25 and shows up consistently for 10 years is not just 10 years ahead of the person who starts at 35. They are decades ahead because each year's learning, relationship building, skill development, and experience has been compounding on top of everything that came before. Procrastination is the opposite of compounding. Every year you delay starting the thing that matters is not just one lost year. It is 1 year's worth of compounding lost. And those compounding years are irreplaceable. This is why the cost of delay is not linear. It does not just add up. It multiplies. The time to plant the tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. But understand clearly, starting today does not recover what was lost by starting 20 years ago. It only prevents you from losing another 20 years. Start today. Point 3. The lies procrastination tells you. The reason procrastination is so effective at holding people back is that it does not feel like self-destruction. It feels reasonable. It feels justified. It comes with explanations that sound logical in the moment, even when those explanations are quietly keeping you from everything you want. Let us examine the most common lies procrastination tells and the truth that dismantles each one. Lie number 1. I'll be more ready tomorrow. This is perhaps the most widely believed lie in the history of human underachievement. The assumption embedded in this lie is that readiness is a state you arrive at, that at some point, after enough preparation and research and mental rehearsal, you will finally feel fully equipped to begin. And at that point, starting will be easy. The truth is that readiness is not a destination. It is a practice. You do not become ready by waiting. You become ready by doing. Every skill you will ever need to succeed at the thing you are delaying will be developed through the actual doing of that thing, not through endless contemplation of it. The surgeon who has performed 1,000 operations did not become skilled by reading about surgery for 10 years before ever entering an operating room. They became skilled by operating, imperfectly at first, then with growing competence as experience accumulated. The writer who has published 20 books did not write the first one after achieving perfect literary readiness. They sat down, wrote badly for a while, improved through practice, and eventually got good. Whatever you are waiting to feel ready for, you will never feel ready enough in advance. You will only develop the readiness through engagement with the actual work. So the honest translation of "I'll be more ready tomorrow" is "I am choosing to stay at this skill level forever, because tomorrow, without action, produces the same level of readiness as today. Begin before you feel ready. Readiness will come as you go." Lie number 2, I need motivation first. This lie has probably kept more potential unrealized than almost any other single thought. The story most people carry about motivation goes like this. Motivation is a feeling that descends upon you from somewhere outside yourself. A spark of inspiration, a surge of energy, a moment of absolute clarity about what you want and why it matters. And when that feeling arrives, that is when you work. When it is not there, you wait for it to return. This is completely backwards. Motivation, at its most powerful and sustainable, does not precede action. It follows action. Movement creates motivation, not the other way around. When you begin working on something, even reluctantly, even when you feel unmotivated, even when you would rather be doing almost anything else, your brain engages with the task. Your attention focuses. Your mind starts solving problems. And fairly quickly, you find that the motivation that was absent before you started is now present, fueled by the very act of engaging with the work. This is why the hardest part of almost any task is simply beginning, not completing it, not the difficult middle sections, just the initial activation energy required to actually sit down and start. Successful people have learned this truth intuitively. They do not wait for motivation, they generate it through action. They treat motivation as an output of their work, not a prerequisite for it. And that one shift in understanding changes everything. Stop waiting to feel motivated. Begin the work and let the motivation arise from the work itself. Lie number 3, I work better under pressure. This one is interesting because it contains a kernel of truth wrapped around a much larger falsehood. It is true that deadlines create urgency, and urgency can produce focus. When the report is due in 3 hours and there is truly no alternative, a certain kind of energy does activate that may not have been present earlier. But here is what "I work better under pressure" actually means for most of the people who say it. I only work under pressure, which is to say, I have trained myself to be incapable of doing the work until the external pressure of an unavoidable deadline forces it out of me. And the work produced under those conditions is rarely the best work. It is the minimum viable work. The work that gets something done, not the work that gets something done well. The first draft that has to serve as the final draft. The presentation built at midnight the night before, missing the depth and nuance it would have had with 3 weeks of thoughtful development. More importantly, this habit is entirely at your mercy. You can create pressure at any point you choose. You can set your own deadlines, make them real by communicating them to others, and build the urgency you claim to need without waiting until the last possible moment. But really, what needs to happen is the development of the capacity to work in the absence of external pressure. Because the most important work of your life, the work that is truly yours, the dream you are building, the creative project that came from your own vision, probably does not have anyone imposing a deadline on it. Nobody is going to call you and demand to know why your book isn't written yet. Nobody will send you a warning notice about your unstarted business. If you can only work under external pressure, you will never do the work that matters most, because nobody is coming to create that pressure for you. Learn to be your own pressure. Learn to work without waiting for urgency to force your hand. Lie number 4, the conditions aren't right yet. The conditions will never be perfectly right, ever. At any point in human history, in any set of circumstances, a thoughtful person could find legitimate reasons why the conditions were not ideal for beginning something important. There will always be something missing, some resource not yet available, some uncertainty not yet resolved, some competing obligation demanding attention, some risk not yet fully mitigated. The people who built remarkable things did not build them in ideal conditions. They built them in the conditions they had, imperfect, incomplete, uncertain conditions, because they understood that waiting for perfect conditions is simply a more sophisticated form of procrastination. The conditions you have right now are the conditions you have. The resources available to you today are the resources you have today. The time, the energy, the information, the circumstances, all of it is what it is. You can either begin from here, doing what you can with what you have, or you can continue waiting for a more convenient configuration of reality that will probably never arrive. Begin now. Improve the conditions as you go. Lie number 5. Once I finish something else, I'll focus on this. The magical future where everything else is handled and you finally have clear space to focus on the important thing. This is one of the most seductive fantasies in the procrastinator's mind. Once I get through this busy season at work, once the kids are a little older, once I pay off this debt, once I move to a better place, once things settle down. The extraordinary thing about this lie is that it always defers to a future that never actually arrives. Because life does not quiet down and clear its schedule to make room for your important projects. There is always another busy season, another obligation, another situation demanding attention. The person waiting for life to calm down enough to finally begin is the person who never begins. The truth is that you will never have more time than you have right now. You may have different time in the future, rearranged, reconfigured, distributed differently across different obligations, but you will not have more of it. And if you have not found a way to carve out space for what matters most within the life you currently have, you probably will not suddenly find that space in some cleaner, simpler future that may never come. Start building the habit of doing the important work now, alongside everything else, not instead of everything else. Weave it into your current life rather than waiting for a life that makes it easier. Point 4, the philosophy of discipline. We need to talk about something deeper than tactics. Before we get to the practical strategies for overcoming procrastination, we need to understand the philosophy that makes those strategies work. Because without the right philosophy, strategies are just techniques, and techniques fail under pressure. That philosophy is discipline. Not the harsh, punishing, militaristic version of discipline that most people imagine when they hear the word. Not the idea of grinding yourself down through sheer willpower until you have nothing left. But discipline in its truest form, the commitment to a chosen course of action, maintained consistently regardless of how you feel on any given day. Let us understand what discipline actually is and why it matters more than any other single quality in the pursuit of a meaningful life. Discipline is the bridge between the life you want and the life you have, stands a bridge. On one side is the vision, the dream, the goal, the version of yourself you believe you are capable of becoming. On the other side is the reality of who you are and where you stand today. The bridge connecting those 2 points is built out of daily action, and that bridge is maintained by discipline. Motivation will take you to the bridge. Discipline is what gets you across it. Because here is the reality. You will not always feel like doing the work. There will be mornings when the alarm goes off and every cell in your body wants to stay horizontal. There will be afternoons when the task in front of you feels pointless and the progress feels invisible. There will be seasons when the doubt is louder than the dream, when the resistance is stronger than the desire, when everything in you wants to stop and everything outside of you seems to be conspiring to give you a convincing excuse to do so. Motivation cannot carry you through those moments. Motivation is weather dependent. It comes and goes with your mood, your circumstances, your energy level, the last thing you read, the last conversation you had. It is a powerful but unreliable force, spectacular when it is present, completely absent when you need it most. Discipline, by contrast, does not depend on how you feel. Discipline is the commitment you made when you felt clear and purposeful, being honored even when you feel confused and depleted. It is the promise kept to your future self by your present self, regardless of whether the keeping of that promise is comfortable in the moment. And discipline, unlike motivation, can be built. It can be developed through practice, strengthened through consistency, deepened through repetition. Every time you choose action over avoidance, you build the muscle. Every time you follow through on a commitment to yourself, you add to your reserves of self-discipline. And over time, through hundreds of small choices made in the right direction, discipline becomes less something you have to force and more something you simply are. The compound effect of daily discipline. Consider 2 people beginning the same journey on the same day. Both have the same level of knowledge, the same access to resources, the same starting point. The only difference? One practices discipline daily, showing up consistently and doing the work regardless of how they feel. The other shows up only when motivated, some days, but not reliably, not consistently. In the first week, the difference between them is small. The disciplined person is a little further ahead. The motivated only person is not dramatically behind. By the end of the first month, the gap has widened. The disciplined person has 30 days of consistent practice and learning. The other has perhaps 12 or 15 good days. By the end of the first year, the gap is enormous. The disciplined person has built systems, developed skills, gained experience, and generated momentum. The motivated only person, despite having the same raw intelligence and starting conditions, is months or years behind. Not because they lack talent, but because they lacked consistency. This is the compound effect of daily discipline, and it is one of the most powerful forces available to any human being. Small daily actions, when applied consistently, produce results that seem almost miraculous over long time horizons. The key word is consistently, not perfectly, not without occasional missed days, but consistently, showing up more often than not, maintaining the direction even when the pace varies. Freedom through discipline. Here's the paradox that most people miss. Discipline creates freedom. The person without discipline is not free. They are enslaved to their moods, their impulses, their moment-to-moment comfort preferences, and ultimately to other people's timelines and demands, because they never built anything of their own that gives them options. The person with discipline is free in ways that the undisciplined person can barely imagine. Free to wake up knowing that the important work will get done, regardless of how the day unfolds. Free from the constant anxiety of unfinished business and unkept promises. Free from the dependence on external circumstances being just right before they can function. Free to build the life they want, on their own terms, through the consistent application of their own effort. Discipline is not a cage, it is the key. The athlete who trains every morning, rain or shine, motivated or not, is more free than the person who trains only when they feel like it, because when competition comes, the disciplined athlete knows they are prepared. The writer who sits down at the same time every day and writes, regardless of inspiration, is more free than the writer who waits for the muse, because the disciplined writer has a book and the other writer has intentions. Build discipline and you build freedom. These things are not opposites, they are partners. Point 5, the practical framework, how to actually stop procrastinating. Philosophy matters, but philosophy without practical application is just poetry. So let us get specific. Let us talk about exactly what to do, not in abstract terms, but in concrete, actionable terms that you can implement starting today. Strategy 1, the 5-minute rule. Here is a simple truth about procrastination. Most of the suffering it causes happens before the work begins, not during it. The anticipation of the task, the heaviness of it sitting in your mind, the vague dread of engaging with it, is almost always worse than the actual experience of doing it. The 5-minute rule exploits this truth. When you are resisting starting something, commit only to 5 minutes. Not to finishing it, not to making significant progress. Just 5 minutes of genuine engagement with the task. What typically happens in those 5 minutes is that you discover the task is more manageable than your avoidance brain suggested. Your engagement activates what psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect, the mind's tendency to fixate on incomplete tasks and drive toward their completion once begun. Starting creates a pull toward finishing that simply does not exist before you begin. Often those 5 minutes become 20, then an hour. Then you find yourself finishing something you had been avoiding for days. And even on the occasions when 5 minutes is genuinely all you have, 5 minutes of real progress is infinitely more than 0 minutes. Progress compounds. 5 minutes today makes tomorrow's 5 minutes slightly easier. And over time, those 5-minute commitments build into the kind of consistent daily practice that produces remarkable results. Use this rule for everything you have been avoiding. The difficult email, the workout, the business plan, the chapter you have not been able to start. Give it 5 minutes and see what follows. Strategy 2, environment architecture. Your environment is shaping your behavior constantly, whether you are conscious of it or not. The way your workspace is arranged, what is visible, what is accessible, what sounds are present, all of it is nudging you towards certain behaviors and away from others. Most people have environments that are optimized for distraction and poorly configured for focused work. The phone sits next to the computer with notifications active. The social media tabs are a single click away. The desk is cluttered with visual chaos that fragments attention. The workspace is in a high-traffic area where interruptions are constant. You will not out-willpower your environment. Nobody can sustain the constant effort required to resist 1,000 environmental cues pulling them toward distraction. The solution is not stronger willpower. It is better environment design. Take time to deliberately architect your workspace for the kind of focused work you want to do. Put the phone in another room when it is time to work, not on silent, in another room. Close every browser tab except the ones directly relevant to the task at hand. Clear the visual clutter. If possible, work in a space that your brain associates exclusively with focused work, so that entering that space automatically triggers the mental state you want. Make the right behaviors easy. Make the wrong behaviors difficult. Your environment should be pulling you toward focus, not away from it. Strategy 3, time blocking. The scheduling approach most people use is reactive. They have a list of things to do, and they do them whenever there is a gap in their day, fitting important work around the edges of whatever else demands their attention. This approach reliably produces the outcome where urgent but unimportant things crowd out the important but non-urgent things, which is to say, the things that actually matter get done last, or not at all. Time blocking is the opposite approach. Instead of filling gaps in your schedule with work, you schedule the work first, treating your most important tasks as non-negotiable appointments with yourself, and let everything else arrange itself around those blocks. This means designating specific hours of specific days as dedicated, protected time for the work that matters most. No meetings scheduled in those blocks. No interruptions tolerated. No availability for anything else during those hours. The phone is away, the notifications are off, and for that defined period, the only thing that exists is the work you chose to prioritize. The key to making time blocks work is treating them with the same seriousness you would give any other important obligation. You would not cancel a meeting with your most important client because you did not feel like having it. Apply that same standard to your commitments to yourself. Start with 1 or 2 hours per day. Choose the time when your mental energy is typically at its highest. For many people, this is morning, before the day's noise and demands accumulate. Over time, build up to more time as the habit solidifies and the results become visible. Strategy 4. The priority hierarchy. Not all tasks are created equal, and one of the primary ways procrastination maintains its grip is through the illusion of busyness. When you spend all day on tasks that feel productive but do not actually move your most important goals forward, you end the day exhausted and wondering why nothing seems to be improving. The antidote is ruthless clarity about priority. At the end of each day, identify the single most important thing you can do tomorrow. The one task that would, if completed, make the biggest positive impact on what you are building. This becomes your first priority the following morning, to be worked on before anything else competes for your attention. This practice forces a discipline of discernment that most people avoid. It requires you to decide what matters most, which means also deciding what matters less. And that kind of clear, honest prioritization makes procrastination much harder to maintain, because it is much easier to avoid a vague, unprioritized pile of obligations than it is to avoid the single most important thing you have clearly committed to doing today. Keep the list short. One non-negotiable priority, 2 or 3 secondary priorities, and acknowledge that anything beyond that is optimistic. Better to complete 3 important things than to list 15 and complete none of them. Strategy 5. The completion ritual. Beginnings get a lot of attention. Start before you feel ready. Use the 5-minute rule. Just begin. But completions matter enormously too, and most people have no systematic relationship with finishing. When you complete a meaningful task, finish the chapter, send the proposal, complete the workout, have the difficult conversation. Take a moment to acknowledge the completion. Not excessively, but consciously. Write it down. Check it off with intention. Give yourself 30 seconds to recognize that you did what you said you would do. This practice does 2 important things. First, it creates a positive reinforcement loop around completing things, which over time makes completion feel natural and satisfying. Second, it builds evidence in your own mind that you are someone who follows through, and that evidence reshapes your identity gradually, one completion at a time. The goal is to become the kind of person who reliably finishes what they start. That reputation, built first with yourself, then increasingly visible to the world, is one of the most valuable assets you can develop. Strategy 6. Managing the inner critic. Procrastination is often fueled by a harsh inner voice. The part of you that tells you the work will not be good enough, that you will fail, that people will judge, that you are not capable of producing what you imagine. This voice is not trying to destroy you. It developed as a protection mechanism, attempting to shield you from the pain of failure or judgment by keeping you away from situations where those things could happen. But it has dramatically overstepped its usefulness. In trying to protect you from failure, it is creating the very outcome it claims to fear. Because the greatest failure is not attempting something and falling short. The greatest failure is never attempting it at all. Learning to manage this voice is essential to breaking the procrastination cycle. A few approaches. Recognize it for what it is. When the inner critic shows up with its catalog of reasons why you should not begin or why it will not work, recognize that this is fear speaking, not truth. The voice is not giving you accurate information about the likelihood of success. It is giving you an emotional response to perceived risk, dressed up in the language of reason. Do not argue with it. Act despite it. Trying to argue your inner critic into silence rarely works. The fear simply generates more sophisticated counterarguments. The more effective approach is to acknowledge the voice. Yes, I hear you. This might not work perfectly, and act anyway. The voice loses power over time when you consistently demonstrate that you can act in its presence. Focus on the process, not the judgment. Much of perfectionism-driven procrastination is rooted in fear of how the finished product will be received. Shift your focus from the imagined future judgment to the present moment process. Right now, you are just writing a sentence, just making one call, just completing one section. The judgment of the finished work is a problem for another day. Right now, just do the next thing. Strategy 7. Accountability systems. Humans are social creatures, and our behavior is profoundly shaped by what others see and know. We are far more likely to follow through on commitments we have made publicly than commitments we have made only privately. This is not a weakness to be ashamed of. It is a feature of human psychology that you can use intentionally. Build accountability into your important projects. Tell someone whose respect you value what you are working on and when you will have it done. Find a partner working towards similar goals and check in with each other regularly. Make your commitments visible to people who will actually care whether you follow through. This is not about outsourcing your self-discipline to external pressure. It is about using the very real psychological power of social accountability to reinforce the discipline you are building internally. Over time, as your internal discipline strengthens, you will need less external accountability. But in the building phase, there is no shame in using every tool available. Point 6. Identity transformation. Becoming someone who acts. Everything we have discussed so far, the philosophy, the strategies, the practical frameworks, will ultimately only work if they are supported by something deeper, a shift in how you see yourself. Because behavior flows from identity. What you do consistently is a direct reflection of who you believe yourself to be. And if you believe, at the level of identity, that you are someone who procrastinates, someone who means well but does not follow through, someone who starts but does not finish, then all the strategies in the world will be fighting uphill against that foundational self-concept. The lasting cure for procrastination is not a better technique. It is a new identity. You need to become, in your own mind and in actual practice, someone who acts, someone who follows through, someone who does what they say they will do, keeps the promises they make to themselves, and builds the life they want through consistent daily action. How does this shift happen? Not through affirmations alone, not through simply telling yourself a different story. It happens through evidence, through the accumulation of small, consistent actions that prove to you, day by day, that you are capable of being someone different, casting votes for your future self. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. When you follow through on a small commitment to yourself, you cast a vote for, I am someone who follows through. When you begin before you feel fully ready, you cast a vote for, I am someone who acts. When you choose the important work over the comfortable distraction, you cast a vote for, I am someone who prioritizes what matters. No single vote determines the election, but over hundreds and thousands of casts, a clear winner emerges. And that winner becomes your identity. The person who consistently does the right thing, even in small things, eventually becomes, in their own perception and in actual reality, a person of discipline and reliable action. This is why starting small is not a compromise. It is the strategy. Begin with commitments so small, they are almost impossible to fail. 5 minutes of focused work, 1 paragraph written, 1 healthy meal chosen, 1 difficult email sent. These tiny actions seem trivial, but each one is a vote, and votes compound. The identity statement. Here is a practical exercise that can accelerate this shift. Stop thinking of procrastination as something you do, and start thinking of action as something you are. Instead of, I am trying to stop procrastinating, say, I am someone who acts. Instead of, I need to be more disciplined, say, I am a disciplined person. Instead of, I want to finish things, say, I am someone who completes what I start. These are not just words. They are directional signals to your behavior. When you carry a new identity, you make decisions that align with that identity. When you see yourself as a disciplined person, you ask, what would a disciplined person do right now? And then you do it. The identity shift does not precede the behavior change. They happen simultaneously and reinforce each other. Begin acting like the person you want to be, and the identity of that person will gradually become your own. The long game. Transformation of this kind does not happen in a week. It probably does not happen fully in a month. What you are building, through consistent daily action, through the gradual accumulation of evidence that you are someone who follows through, is a character change. And character changes take time. Be patient with the process while being impatient with the day-to-day excuses. Give yourself grace for the bad days while maintaining the non-negotiable commitment to keep going. Understand that the journey has setbacks, and that setbacks are not failures. They are data points that tell you where more work is needed. The person you are becoming is being built right now, in the habits of today. Not in some dramatic future moment of transformation. Not after some threshold of readiness has been reached. Right now, in the mundane choices of this hour and this day, the person you will be 10 years from now is being constructed. Who do you want that person to be? Point 7. The final decision. We have traveled a long way together in this conversation. We have looked honestly at procrastination, what it really is, where it comes from, the multiple disguises it wears, the real price it extracts from your life. We have examined the lies it tells and the truths that dismantle those lies. We have built a philosophy of discipline and a practical framework for action. And we have talked about the identity transformation that makes all of it sustainable. Now it comes down to the only thing that has ever mattered, your decision. Not someday, today. Not after you feel more ready, more motivated, more certain. Today, in whatever state of readiness you actually have, in whatever imperfect circumstances surround you right now. Here is what I need you to understand before this conversation ends. Your dreams are waiting on your decisions, not on better circumstances, not on more resources, not on a more convenient season of life, on your decisions. Every dream you carry, every vision of a better life, a more meaningful career, a healthier body, a business you built, a skill you mastered, a relationship you deepened, is waiting on the decision to begin acting on it consistently. That decision is yours to make, and you can make it right now. Your future self is being created by your present habits. Somewhere between 5 and 10 years from now, there will be a version of you who looks back on this moment. That future version of you will either be profoundly grateful that you decided to change, that you took this conversation seriously and built the discipline to act consistently on what matters, or they will be wishing, with the dull ache of accumulated regret, that you had. Which of those futures do you want to give them? The cost of delay is not neutral. Every day you choose comfort over discipline, distraction over focus, tomorrow over today. You are not simply treading water, you are falling behind. Because the world does not stop, the opportunities do not wait, and the compound effect works against you just as powerfully as it works for you. There is no standing still. You are either building or losing ground. The smallest beginning is infinitely better than the most perfect plan that never starts. You do not need a perfect system. You do not need ideal conditions. You do not need to have resolved every uncertainty or answered every question. You need to begin. One step, one action, one day lived with intention rather than avoidance, and then another, and another after that. This is not complicated. It is not easy, but it is simple. Do the work. Keep doing the work. Build the habit of doing the work even when you do not feel like doing the work. And watch what happens to your life over months and years of consistent action. The gap between the life you have and the life you want is not made of talent or luck or resources or opportunity. It is made of daily decisions, repeated over time, that either move you toward or away from what you want. You know what you need to do. The only question left is whether you will do it. Not tomorrow. Not after this video ends. Not once conditions improve or motivation arrives or the perfect plan crystallizes. Today. Begin today. Because your future is not something that will happen to you. It is something you are building right now with every choice you make and every action you take and every moment you choose to act instead of waiting. Your dreams are not waiting for the right moment. They are waiting for you to decide that now is the moment. One day or day one. You decide, now decide, and begin. The promise. There is a version of your life that exists in possibility. A version where the important work gets done, where the goals pursued are actually achieved, where you end each day having moved meaningfully in the direction you chose, where the years add up to something real and built and genuinely yours. That version is not a fantasy. It is a choice, made daily, until it becomes a lifestyle, until it becomes who you are. The distance between where you are and that version of your life is shorter than you think. Not because it requires no work, it requires enormous work, but because the work is available to you right now, in this moment, in whatever small or large form you can begin with today. The bridge is discipline. The destination is the life you have always been capable of. And every single step on that bridge is built the same way. By showing up, doing the work, keeping the promise to yourself, and choosing again and again, on the good days and the hard days alike, to be someone who acts. That is all it takes. Everything else you want will follow from that single, sustained commitment. Begin now, begin today, and do not stop.